Star Trek's audience is a fairly diverse group. We don't universally agree on anything, not even liking Star Trek, but there are a few subjects on which there is close to universal agreement. Most of us think Star Trek II is a good movie. Most of us think Star Trek V is a bad movie, though some of us who think it's a bad movie love it anyway, and I'll raise my hand on that one. Most of us agree that the first season of Star Trek The Next Generation is overall pretty damn rotten. And I say most of us because there are actually some people who think the first season of TNG is good. And if you're one of those people, I don't want to talk to you! Get away! You're sick! Get away! Another notion that most Star Trek fans agree on is that, a few bright spots aside, the second season of TNG is also terrible. But that is one commonly agreed upon notion that I cannot and will not go along with. I'm not trying to be controversial or edgy. I can't help it. It's where I live. Season 2 of Star Trek TNG has a reputation almost as bad as Season 1 of Star Trek TNG, and whenever I hear Trekkies talking trash about TNG's sophomore season, I have an urge to ask them one challenging question. Is Star Trek TNG's second season actually better than you think? The thing about TNG Season 2 is that it's a transitional period for the series. The state of affairs behind the scenes remained unstable. Maurice Hurley became the new showrunner, which led to conflicts with the series writers. Some of those writers left the show, including David Gerrold, who never actually got one of his scripts produced. New writers came aboard, including Melinda Snodgrass, who would write some of the most notable episodes of the second and third seasons. Season 2 was also produced following a writer's strike, which shortened the season by several episodes and forced the producers to hastily rework a script that had been written earlier for the unproduced Star Trek Phase 2 series in order to meet their episode order. There were also budget issues that affected the series, most significantly toward the end of the season. Things on screen were evolving as well. The crew of the Enterprise was slightly reshuffled, with most of the regulars being placed into the positions they would occupy for the rest of the series. Worf became the permanent chief of security and assumed his post at the tactical station. Geordi was promoted to chief engineer, with main engineering becoming his domain. 10 Forward, which would quickly become one of the most important locations in the show, was introduced, and along with it, Guinan, the universe's wisest and most patient and mysterious bartender. And of course, the most significant development of all, yeah baby, Season 2 is when Riker and the series grew the beard. Looking good, Space Dad. The only major on-screen adjustment that didn't wind up being permanent, or at least lasting for a few seasons, is Diana Muldaur joining the cast as Dr. Pulaski, replacing Gates McFadden's Dr. Crusher. At the start of Season 3, Crusher was back, and Pulaski had stepped into an empty turbolift shaft, never to be seen again. TNG was changing in Season 2, but we wouldn't see the end result of those changes until later seasons. It was becoming the show that Trekkies my age remember fondly, but it wasn't quite there yet. Because of that, Season 2 is very uneven. More uneven than Season 1, I'll give you that. There are many more ups and downs in terms of the quality of the show. But in fairness to Season 2, that's also because Season 1 has almost no ups. Season 1 starts low and more or less stays there until it finally starts to get kinda good in the last few episodes. The line graph is pretty straight with a slight incline at the end. The line graph of the quality of Season 2 looks like a roller coaster designed by a 7-year-old on a sugar-fueled quest for maximum carnage. Starts out low, up a little bit, up a little, down, levels off, up a little, way up, vertical drop. For me, the low points of Season 2, which I'm not going to overlook, are outweighed by the high points. I'll get to those in due time as well, but I actually want to spend most of this video talking about the bits of Season 2 that are often ignored. Trekkies like me who grew up on TNG remember that Season 2 brought some of the very best and very worst shows of the series, but what about the episodes that fall between those extremes? The ones that weren't bad, but also weren't great, and were just kinda, pretty good. I think the, pretty good episodes of season 2 are some of the best episodes of that type of the whole series, because the thing about the, pretty good episodes of season 2 is they get weird. Like trapped in a void by an all-powerful giant scary face weird. Like picking up a shuttlecraft with an extra Captain Picard inside weird. And like one of my favorite weird episodes of TNG or any other Trek series from just about halfway through season 2, the Royale. The Enterprise arrives at an unexplored planet to follow up on reports from a passing Klingon ship of strange debris in the planet's atmosphere. O'Brien beams aboard a chunk of the debris, and lo and behold, it's from a NASA spacecraft. Data confirms that the debris dates back to the 21st century, which is wild because this planet is way, way too far from Earth for any ship from that era to have reached it. After scanning the surface of the planet, Wesley and Geordi have detected an artificial structure standing in a calm spot in the middle of a powerful storm system. Even stranger, the structure is surrounded by a pocket of breathable atmosphere. Of course, Picard's like, number 1, take a couple of our most important crew members and beam down there immediately. So Riker, Data, and Worf beam down to that pocket of breathable atmosphere, and they find total silent blackness. And in the middle of that blackness, a revolving door. What do you do if you find yourself on an alien world surrounded by darkness with a completely freestanding revolving door right in front of you? If your answer is, I walk through the door, congratulations, you have a future in Starfleet. Maybe not a very long one. On the other side of the door, the away team finds the busy lobby of a mid-20th century hotel. Guests are talking and laughing and having a good time. Some are gathered at blackjack or craps tables. They appear very alive and very human for people who can't possibly be here. Riker tries to call the Enterprise to fill Picard in on this situation, but they lost communications when they walked through the door. Data says, maybe we should go back to the ship. Riker replies, maybe you should do what I tell you, robot subordinate. I'm in charge here, and I say we mingle. So the three of them walk up to the front desk and talk to the manager, Mr. Gorpley, who recognizes them as the trio of foreign businessmen they've been expecting. He's like, welcome to the Hotel Royale. Let me just get your room keys. But this guy interrupts, and Gorpley's like, what is it, Bartokomous? Did Rita, call? No, and I told you to drop it. Rita's Mickey D's girl, and if you had any sense, you'd quit thinking about her. Whatever, you just let me know if she calls. Gorpley turns to Riker, Data, and Worf like he's in way over his head. If Mickey D finds out about him and Rita, there'll be trouble, and it'll be all his fault. If shit goes down while you're here, don't hold it against the hotel. Blame it on the bellboy. The away team takes a little tour around the hotel, making chit-chat with some of the other guests. Data befriends this sharp-dressed high roller who hails from, some U.S. state. You can't really tell which. The people in the hotel all look and act human, and all think that they are human and on Earth. But Data tells Riker that according to his tricorder scans, none of them are actually alive. They're real, they're not illusions, and they're not machines, they're just here somehow. The high roller teaches Data how to play blackjack, and it turns out Data's pretty good at it, but Riker interrupts and says, okay, if Captain Picard finds out I was letting his robot gamble, he'll be pissed. It's time for us to get out of here. Riker, Data, and Worf all head back to the revolving door. They walk through it, but wind up right back in the hotel. They try again. Same thing. They can't leave through the revolving door. There are no other exits that they can see. Worf tries to blast through the wall with his phaser, but it has no effect. They're trapped in the Royale. Riker interrupts the ongoing melodrama at the front desk. The bellboy has a gun now, and he's promising to shoot Mickey D if he shows his face tonight. Riker says, hey, we want to leave the hotel? Gorpley says, there's the door. Riker says, the door don't work. I want to speak to your boss. Mr. Wainwright? Sorry, he doesn't appear until season 3. Gorpley's no help, but fortunately, Data has continued scanning with his tricorder and found something interesting. Traces of human DNA on one of the upper floors of the hotel. After some shenanigans with the elevator, you have to push a button to get the doors to open? Jesus, why not just make us climb a rope to get up there? They track down the DNA to this room. Riker goes to the bed and pulls back the sheet to reveal a skeleton of a human man. Riker's like, damn, he's dead. I was hoping he could tell us where the DNA was. Data estimates the man in the bed died over 280 years ago. Worf discovers an American spacesuit hanging in the closet. The debris they found in the atmosphere, the old NASA ship, it was this man's ship. Riker wonders what the point of all this is. A hotel that isn't supposed to be here, people with no life signs. The only real person in the whole place is this guy who's been dead for almost 3 centuries. What gives? From the name tag on the spacesuit, they learn the man's name was Colonel Ritchie. They snoop around his room a bit more and find some books. One is a paperback novel titled Hotel Royale. Data speed reads it and summarizes it for the others, and it's the scenario they're living right now. The hotel, the gamblers, the melodrama with the bellboy and Rita and Mickey D, it's all drawn directly from the book. The other book is a diary with just one entry, written by Colonel Ritchie. In it, Ritchie explains, for the benefit of any humans who might one day be reading it, that his ship was struck by some kind of alien infection that killed everyone aboard but him. The aliens responsible for the deaths of the others didn't mean to hurt anyone, so to make it up to Colonel Ritchie, they created this place for him to live, basing everything off of the Hotel Royale novel which the astronauts had brought along on the ship, thinking it was a representative example of human society. Because Hotel Royale is such a rotten, trashy novel, being stuck here was basically hell for Colonel Ritchie. His diary entry says that at the time of its writing, he had been there for 38 years. He ends with, "I shall welcome death when it comes." I know how he feels. I had the exact same thought every time I watched a Lord of the Rings movie. They don't actually last 38 years. It only seems that way. By this time, the gang on the Enterprise has figured out how to restore communications with the away team, and Riker fills Picard in on everything that's been happening. Picard's like, yeah, that's definitely some Star Trek shit. They still can't figure out how to beam the away team back up. Something about the structure of the hotel is blocking the transporter signal, so Riker tells Data and Worf to split up and see if they can find some other way out. For his part, Picard volunteers to make the ultimate sacrifice and read the novel, Hotel Royale. Eventually, the ruthless mobster Mickey D makes an appearance, argues with the bellboy about Rita, and shoots the bellboy dead right there in the middle of the hotel. Then, he leaves. He walks out the door and leaves. Riker's like, how'd he get the door to work? Picard, who has been following along with the text of the novel on his computer, says it's part of the story. Mickey D shoots the bellboy, and then he leaves. Riker's like, so how does the novel end? Picard says, that's pretty much it. The hotel gets bought by foreign investors who then return home and life just sort of goes on. Riker remembers how Mr. Gorpley greeted them when they arrived, referring to them as foreign businessmen. Riker's like, that's it. That's how we get out. We're buying this dump. Data heads to the craps table to gamble for the money they'll need to buy the hotel. He loses at first thanks to the dice being loaded, but he fixes that by squeezing them real hard and then goes on a run, racking up enough to buy the hotel in no time. He's like, okay, let's buy the hotel now. But Riker says, no, keep going. Bet it all. I've got the sickness. Why'd we ever get rid of money? God, I've never felt so alive. Data wins again and goes to cash out, but Gorpley says, no can do. You've broken the bank. Riker says, that's fine. We'll just take the hotel instead. Here, take the purchase price out of our winnings and spread the rest around. That's it. We're done. Let's get out of here. They exit through the revolving door, which works this time because they're the foreign investors and they're supposed to leave, according to the novel, and beam back to the Enterprise, and that's pretty much it. Not one of the deeper Star Trek episodes you'll ever see. No political message or social commentary, just a surreal sci-fi horror premise, a relatively minor puzzle for the characters to solve, and that's about all. It's kinda existentially terrifying if you think about it, being trapped in a simulation of a bad novel created for an astronaut who hated it and died centuries ago. It's also a lot of fun to watch, and best of all, it's weird. Not in a trippy, abstract way, in the uncanny, unsettling way that some of the best episodes of The Twilight Zone or classic Star Trek were weird. Not a what the hell is going on here kind of weird, more like a something's not right kind of weird. It makes for a really enjoyable and unique episode. Also, Mr. Gorpley is here! Put Sam Anderson in everything, I'll never complain. How frequently the show gets entertainingly weird is, I would argue, the characteristic that defines Season 2 relative to the rest of the series. Because Season 2 was a transitional period, because writers and producers were coming and going, because there were casting changes, and because the future of the show was by no means certain at this point, the creators of TNG were willing to try things, to experiment with tone and pacing, to mix in different genres, to play with the characterizations of the main cast, because none of those attributes had really been settled on yet. It didn't always work. Like I said before, the quality of Season 2 travels up and down some dizzyingly steep slopes. The peaks are high and the valleys are low. Some of the lousiest episodes TNG ever produced were produced during Season 2. Hello, outrageous Okana! Yeah, and the Dauphin. You're not very many people's favorite episode, are you? Oh, sure. What list of the worst episodes of TNG Season 2 would be complete without Shades of Grey? A clip show? What do they think this is, MacGyver? To be fair, the producers made it a clip show because Paramount allowed them to go over budget for a few episodes earlier in the season and demanded that they make a super cheap episode at the end of the season to balance it out. They only had 3 sets and 3 days to shoot it, so I cut them some slack. Yeah, it's a bad episode, but it's not the worst. The power of Christ compels you! Don't you wish you had one of these? I was talking to her. The Child. That's another bad one, and that's the season premiere. Maybe that's why Season 2 has such a bad reputation with so many fans. It starts with The Child, and it ends with Shades of Grey. It's hard to overcome a bad first impression, doubly so if you combine it with a bad last impression. Season 2 deserves to be judged by more than its worst installments, though. Beyond the enjoyably weird, pretty good episodes like the Royale, and the handful of legitimate classics, which I'll talk more about in a moment, Season 2 also provides us with some iconic moments and characters that helped to define Star Trek TNG in the popular imagination. For example, Season 2 is the first time we see Data and Geordi dress up in full costume to play Holmes and Watson on the holodeck in the episode Elementary Dear Data, which also introduces holographic Moriarty. There's some great stuff for the freshly bearded and awesome Commander Riker in Season 2 as well. His temporary tour of duty on the Klingon ship in A Matter of Honor, his difficult reunion with his father in the Icarus Factor, and his face-off against Captain Picard in a wargame scenario in Peak Performance. Plus, Season 2 introduces us to the Pack-Leds in Samaritan Snare, Worf's lost love and future baby mama Kalar in The Emissary, and those offensive Irish stereotypes that bring Lloydie in Up the Long Ladder. That last one isn't fondly remembered, but it's definitely remembered. Oh yeah, and that episode has another iconic Riker moment too. That's the one where he murders him some clones. Go Riker, fry those freaks, they are not of God! Also, Season 2 is the only season with Dr. Pulaski. I know a lot of people think she sucks, but I disagree. I don't go so far as to prefer her to Dr. Crusher, but even so, Dr. Pulaski is actually pretty awesome. That's what I'm saying, and have said at length in a separate video. Now, what about the classic shows produced in Season 2? The episodes that stand alongside the very best of TNG, the very best of Star Trek, period. From where I sit, there are at least 2, and maybe 2 more, depending how much you like The Emissary and Peak Performance. I like them both a lot, but for me, they're sitting right on the cusp of greatness. Not quite there. Terrific episodes. In The Emissary, Worf fights Skeletor, gets laid on the holodeck, and saves the day by playing dress-up with Kalar. In Peak Performance, Riker condones Wesley's cheating to win the war game against Captain Picard, and ultimately helps to defeat a Ferengi ship that interrupts the exercise. Plus, Peak Performance has that great bit where Picard says to Data, "It is possible to commit no mistakes and still lose." That is not a weakness. That is life. Real talk from a real one. The two undisputed classics from the second season are The Measure of a Man and Q-Who. And look, those are two of the most celebrated, most discussed, most examined episodes in the entire franchise. Q-Who is the introduction of the Borg, and in my mind, second only to The Best of Both Worlds as one of the best Borg stories ever told. The Measure of a Man is the sort of bold statement in favor of human rights and equality that Star Trek was created to make. I've cited both episodes in previous videos of this series multiple times. I've reviewed them both for my Star Trek Retro Reviews series. I'm not sure what else there is for me to say about them. I mean, as I sit here making this video, I just did the retro review of The Measure of a Man like a month and a half ago. What are you expecting here? That I'm gonna do yet another smart-ass plot summary of that episode with all new jokes? The Enterprise arrives at a brand new starbase. Captain Picard reunites with Captain Lavoie, an old frenemy who prosecuted him during a court-martial once upon a time, and also they used to bang, or they wanted to bang, or still want to bang. It's not clear exactly, but there's definitely a banging-related element to their relationship. Also, Data meets this guy, Commander Bruce Maddox, an inherently likable man who is obviously surrounded by friends who love and respect him, and who isn't at all a weird, creepy sadist without an ounce of empathy. He's here to take Data apart to find out how robots work. Data says, "I'd rather not let you do that." But Maddox says, "Too bad, robot, you belong to Starfleet." Data talks it over with Captain Picard, who says, "I mean, you're a really cool robot and I like you a lot, but don't you kinda belong to Starfleet?" Data says, "I don't think I do. I think I'm more like a person with rights." Picard says, "Oh shit, then that changes everything." Picard goes and talks to Lavoie, who is the JAG officer on the new starbase, and she says Data can't refuse to let Maddox pull off his arms and legs, but he can resign from Starfleet if he's really that dead set against it. Maddox is like, "Robots can't resign. I'll see you in court, robot." So Captain Lavoie convenes a hearing to decide if Maddox gets to break Data into pieces like an unwanted Build-A-Figure. Because the starbase is so new that none of the lawyers have arrived yet, she assigns Captain Picard to represent Data and Commander Riker to represent Maddox. Riker's like, "Ew, not it," but when Lavoie says that if Riker says no, she'll just cancel the hearing and order that Data be parted out like a used Honda Accord, Riker reluctantly agrees. At the hearing, Riker goes first. He calls Data to the witness stand and says, "You're just a robot man with a robot brain, right?" Data's like, "Yeah, basically." Riker says, "Watch how strong this robot man is. I'd like to introduce into evidence this bar of steel. Here, robot man, bend this." Data bends it with no problem. Riker's like, "Awesome. Now take this Snubnose 38 and crush it in your fist, and when you're done with that, I've got a cinder block wall I want you to smash through." Picard's like, "Objection, get to the point." So Riker's like, "Oh, okay," and he rips out one of Data's arms and turns him off. Riker's like, "Do something with that. Now, if anyone needs me, I'll be in my quarters with a pressure washer and a 5-gallon bucket of bourbon trying to blast the memory of this day from my brain. Forgive me, robot man." The hearing takes a recess, and Picard goes to 10 forward to talk to Guinan like, "Man, we are so screwed. They're gonna take away my robot for sure." Guinan says, "Something about this whole situation, Data's basic personhood being denied, him being treated like something disposable to be used by his so-called superiors, it's just so familiar to me. What's that institution where people are owned and treated like property and forced to work with no compensation or protection until they die? Slavery?" What? No, slavery? I never said that. Do you think that's what it's like, though? The hearing resumes, and Picard calls Maddox to the stand, and he says, "Why do you want to take the robot apart?" Maddox says, "To learn how to make more." Picard says, "What gives you the right?" Maddox says, "Because Data is not sentient." Picard says, "Can you prove he isn't sentient?" Maddox says, "No, not really." And Picard says, "Man." If man you be in heart, not adamant, forbear that wicked cant until you have discovered what sentience is and where it is. It may be that in the sight of heaven you are more worthless and less fit to live than this poor robot. Picard turns to Lavoie and says, if Maddox is allowed to take Data apart and make more robots like Data, and then we deny rights to all those robots and just use them for our own purposes, that would be doing a slavery to those robots, which would be wrong because slavery is wrong. So you can either agree with me or you can endorse slavery. It's up to you. Lavoie is like, well, I'm not going to endorse slavery. Except as punishment for a crime, of course. So I rule that Data has the right to decide whether or not he wants to let Maddox take him apart. Data walks up to Maddox and says, I probably don't need to say this, but just in case I do, that's a hard no on the getting taken apart so you can figure out how to make more of me. Later, back on the Enterprise, Data finds Riker alone in the observation lounge. Riker turns around like, have you come to kill me for betraying you? Data says, no, actually, without your betrayal, Captain Picard's once and future hate fuck Captain Lavoie would have ruled against me, so I owe you one. I came to invite you to my victory party. You are a wise and merciful robot, and I'm glad I didn't win so that creepy incel nerd can't take you apart. So am I. Only not literally, because I don't have emotions. The end. It's a great episode. The best episode of the season, I think. Though I wouldn't fight you if you said Q-Who was better. They're both fantastic. I can't honestly say Season 2 overall is fantastic. It contains some of TNG's high points and also some of its low points. Et nomine Patris et Vos! However, I do think its average is higher than a lot of fans say it is. Season 2 is typically lumped together with Season 1 as part of the show's before it was good period, but I don't think that's fair. Sure, the uniforms are still the same, and sure, the show is still grasping for an identity, but that doesn't make the first and second seasons indistinguishable from one another. Season 2 of TNG deserves to be considered on its own terms, judged on the merits of the episodes it contains. Is there anything in Season 1 as captivatingly weird as the Royale? Or Where Silence Has Lease? That's the all-powerful giant scary face one. Is there anything in Season 1 even close to as good as Q-Who or The Measure of a Man? Shit, for that matter, is there anything in Season 7 as good as either of those? I don't mean to shit-talk Season 7 out of nowhere at the end here. It's also got some truly excellent episodes, despite generally being thought of as not that great. The Pegasus, Parallels, Attached, and of course, the best series finale in the franchise, all good things. But are any of those, with the possible exception of the finale, on the level of Q-Who or Measure of a Man? I don't know about that. Then again, Season 2 has The Child and The Outrageous Okana and Get Out of It! And Shades of Grey. Season 7 doesn't have anything that bad. Does it? Okay, maybe the answer to the question of which is worse, Season 2 or Season 7, isn't so clear-cut, but that's not the question I'm addressing in this video. The question of this video is Season 2 better than you think it is? And I say, based on its truly great episodes, as well as the not great but still really interesting episodes that a lot of people sleep on, the answer is yes. Season 2 of Star Trek The Next Generation is actually better than you think it is. Unless you already thought it was good. In which case, none of this was really directed at you. Have you been sitting there watching this whole time anyway, you fucking dork? Thank you, though. I appreciate you watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. And share. Share the video. Tell other people to watch it. Like, hey, check out this hilarious and insightful video by Steve Shives, a YouTuber with nothing but awesome takes and correct opinions. And also, he's not bad looking either. Like, not movie star handsome or anything, but pretty good for just an ordinary person. And also, he's not in terrible shape. He's not in great shape, but you can tell he's trying to look after himself as far as that goes. Or, come up with your own thing. Whatever sounds good to you. Just be sure to mention I'm hilarious. Don't leave that out. I need that. Hey folks, hope you enjoyed this one. I'm going to let you know what the subject of the next Trek Actually video is going to be, but before I do that, I want to give shoutouts to some of my newest Patreon patrons and channel members. First, the new patrons. They are Time Wizard. Thanks, Time Wizard. Jennifer Ross Tyrrell. Thanks, Jennifer. William Tucker. Thanks, William. Orkenspalter TV. Thanks, Orkenspalter TV. Jeremy Pickett. Thanks, Jeremy. Lil. Thanks, Lil. Torrential Sunshine. Thanks, Torrential Sunshine. Ian Harden. Thanks, Ian. Mike Collins. Thanks, Mike. George M. Thanks, George. Jordan. Thanks, Jordan. ACC. Thanks, ACC. Steve Willard. Thanks, Steve. Jim Pistorius. Thanks, Jim. Dan Haig. Thanks, Dan. David Provan. Thanks, David. Stephen Heimbecker. Thanks, Stephen. Rob Chris Jansen. Thanks, Rob. Chris S. Thanks, Chris. Played Too Much. Thanks, Played Too Much. Old Man of the Sea. Thanks, Old Man of the Sea. Mickey Cassidy. Thanks, Mickey. And now for the new channel members. They are Brad Trousseau. Thanks, Brad. Jess. Thanks, Jess. Curtis Peterson. Thanks, Curtis. Gavin Perry. Thanks, Gavin. Proxy XP. Thanks, Proxy XP. Damian Williams. Thanks, Damian. No Fate Project. Where's my jetpack? Thanks, No Fate Project. Where's my jetpack? Kerr. Thanks, Kerr. RJ Mendline. Thanks, RJ Mendline. Thy Boss. Thanks, Thy Boss. Allison Taylor. Thanks, Allison. TR Davis. Thanks, TR. If you want to support this channel, you can do so by going to patreon.com/Steve Shives or clicking the join button to become a member of this channel. All patrons and members get access to exclusive posts that allow you to vote in the polls that determine upcoming Trek Actually topics, and also submit questions ahead of time for my twice-monthly Ask Away live streams. If you pledge $5 a month or more on Patreon, or become a member at the $5 a month tier or higher, you get a shout-out at the end of a Trek Actually video. If you'd rather give a one-time gift than a recurring monthly contribution, you're always more than welcome to do that by clicking the thanks button right below the video or via PayPal or Venmo. The links for those are in the video description. Many thanks. If you like what I do on YouTube, especially the Star Trek related stuff, you should also check out my side projects, The Ensign's Log, the Star Trek themed comedy podcast that I'm on alongside Jason Harding and Amanda Billings, and Trek Reluctantly, the watch-along stream Dana Cole and I do every Wednesday starting at 6 p.m. Eastern on this channel right here. As always, links in the description. Now, for next month's Regulation Trek Actually topic, which will afford us an opportunity to revisit one of the most popular subjects in this series, the Borg. In the past, I've made videos seeking to answer a variety of questions related to the Borg. Which Star Trek show ruined them? Which Star Trek show had the best episode featuring them? Now it's time for another Borg-related question, this time focused in on one Borg in particular. In next month's Trek Actually video, we will explore the question, was Star Trek's Borg Queen actually a terrible idea? That's next month. I'll be back then and a bunch of times before then. So until the next time you see me, whenever that is, thanks for watching and take care, everybody.